Hey everybody, I'm Diana Marquis, and you're listening to About Fundraising, the podcast, where we talk about all things related to nonprofits. For new listeners, here's a little about me. I spent 20 years as a fundraiser for different nonprofits before moving to the consulting side, where I work with charities on their fundraising and board training. My podcast is my way of sharing my resources with you, the listener. I'd love to speak with you directly about your fundraising needs. Schedule your free half-hour consultation at my website, dmgroupconsulting.com. I have one live event coming up. You can see me at the DFW AFP Philanthropy and Action Conference, June 6th and 7th. It will be held at the Hyatt Regency Hotel at the DFW International Airport, and I will be talking about ethics and fundraising. If you want to register for the conference, I put a link to the conference website in the show notes for this episode. Thanks for listening, and enjoy my conversation with Keisha Whaley. I'm here today with Keisha Whaley, a very dear friend and a marketing guru. And the company that she owns and operates is Brass Tacks. And I was first introduced to it when friends of ours were graduating from the apprentice program, which was a few years ago. Mm-hmm. So let's back up a little bit because I want to understand, and I want our listeners to understand, what is marketing? I don't think I know what that means.
Well, and we feel like we're supposed to know, right? Everyone says marketing. We're all supposed to know what this means. I kind of boil it down to say, each one of the words here has its own center point. So at the center of marketing is awareness. At the center of PR is reputation. At the center of advertising is sales. At the center of your brand is the personality. So each of these has its own component. And I like to say that we do branding and marketing because I like to put that personality with the awareness. I was trained in advertising. That's how I kind of came up as a graphic designer. I knew how to make designs that could inspire a sale. But at the end of the day, what I leaned towards was that more kind of human conversational type of thing that really gets to awareness. But that's at the core. To me, that's at the core of marketing.
I really like the way you explain that because, one, I didn't even think about brand awareness, but
sure,
yeah. But that was really helpful.
Yeah.
So most of our conversation will be in the nonprofit arena.
Yeah, happy to. Love that.
Because the clients that I deal with don't have a marketing plan, a marketing strategy, a marketing nothing.
Yeah.
So is there one thing that a small nonprofit can do to market itself?
Yeah. Yes. And I think, just like there's the core of marketing is awareness, the thing that every nonprofit needs to be doing is impact storytelling. They need to tell the story of the impact they make. At the end of the day, that's what we all want to know about each nonprofit. Yeah, but what do you do with the funds you raise? Yeah, but what are you doing for the community or for the environment or for animals? That's really where we're trying to get to. So if you can do effective impact storytelling, then you're doing your job. That storytelling can come through in a number of ways. It can be told through email. It can be told in person. It can be on your website. It can be on social media. Where it lives is the vehicle, but you have to have something within it. So getting good at that impact storytelling and then being consistent about how it's told across all things is the important thing. Because our kind of donor, volunteer, general audiences, they've got a lot of people and other orgs that are vying for their attention and their focus, their dollars, all of it, all the time. And so they're going to, it's just human nature. It's not because any of us are trying to be mean, but we are looking for reasons not to support an organization. There's so much out there that we are saying, oh, well, your website doesn't quite look like it's up to date. Or, you know what, I heard your executive director speak and they said your mission was something different than what I see on your Facebook page. So they're looking for those reasons to say, you don't have it together. I'm going to move on and spend some other time, with another org. But if it's all consistent, if it's all applied, and that impact story is really good and it's true and it's believable, okay, now I can get behind you.
I love hearing you say that, especially the consistent part. Because it can be really simple to, sometimes it's not, but it can be simple. You tell a good client story.
Yeah.
You tell a good, distribution of goods or food story, and people want to hear that because they're aware of your organization. But if you do it once a week and then they don't hear from you for another 3 months, and then maybe at the end of the year,
it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. And that other part about competition is that there are others who are being really diligent on keeping up their cadence of communications. So, the smaller you are, of course, you have to have your head down. You have to be doing the work. There's not time for you to manage all of your own marketing. That's true. You don't have to have the same, daily touch points that the big orgs have. But you do have to have consistency. If you can commit to once a month communications, commit to that. If you can commit to quarterly reports, do that. If you're going to blow it out of the water one time a year, but we know we can count on it, let's see what we can do there. Of course, the farther you get, the more likely you are to lose your audience. But the worst thing that you can do is to try to pick up, and I've gotten used to hearing from you every single week, and then you drop off for 3 months, to your point. And then I go, are they even still around? I don't know what happened. I was getting an email. Did I get dropped off the list? Like, what's going on? So it's you have to you have to find a doable balance, something that you can keep up with, and then you have to be diligent about it.
Is it better to, again, for a small to mid-sized nonprofit, to hire a marketing manager or director, or to contract with a marketing consultant?
I feel like it's really going to come down to what the executive director and maybe even if there are other director level support roles have in their wheelhouse. If you are not a natural storyteller on your own, if you're not comfortable being, public facing and all of that, then you need to start in the consultant side just to generate the ideas, help you, you can kind of explain, okay, this is the schedule, this is what a week looks like in my life, what should I be doing? And they can kind of help you navigate that. But if you go the route of the marketing manager, that means that you already have kind of an idea. Your brain thinks that way. You're able to make that kind of contact touch point with your audiences. Anyway, you need someone to execute for you. So it depends on where you are. Do you need the strategy or the execution? Now, one begets the other. If you need to start on the strategy, then you need to think about how you're going to get it executed. It may not be you. That may be the marketing manager point. But that's kind of the consideration is where is the leadership coming from in terms of their strength and understanding for that. And if it's not there, then you've got to start with the consulting.
I've been in situations where it's almost the opposite of what you just said, where the ED hires someone and just says, here.
Yeah. Oh, that happens a lot.
That's so unfair.
It is. It's unfair to everybody. Because what's going on in the ED's head is, oh, I've given them everything that they need. This is their area of expertise. They can take it and run with it. However, what they're not maybe aware of is how many unspoken expectations they actually have. So when that marketing person comes back with whatever they come back with, the chances that it fits what's in their head is so slim. So they're not going to be happy with what comes out of there. Or maybe they don't actually have everything they need to execute, and so they come back with partial, fragments, or I need more time, I need more money, I need, all of these things. If you're working with a consultant and the executive director says, oh, just get it done, then the consultant needs the back and forth, the dialogue. They've got to work with you. It's collaborative. So in any of those situations, when you just bring someone in and sort of say, okay, go do your job, here's access to our drive, or, ask me any questions you have, but also I only have 5 minutes. There are lots of things that you can set someone up for failure without intending to by any means. But the director does have to be involved for the product to come out the right way.
Oftentimes, marketing and development or fundraising are handled by the same person or department.
Mm-hmm.
Are these really related? Is this a good idea? How can one department handle both?
They are related. They are absolutely related, because the development, anybody who's working in development, they've got to tell a good story. Otherwise, there's not really much you can do. And they have to find the way to balance anecdotal with data, with financials and all of that kind of together. So they are related. I will say, however, that I think that development people, because of their focus, when they're really good, the marketing comes across more as advertising, because they're going for donation dollars. And so they get a little bit away from the higher impact to go for what they know is going to get the donation. So what I would say is a development team solely handling the marketing will be effective for pulling in donations, but it may not be as effective for pulling in volunteers. It may not be as effective for really reaching just kind of the general public and having them understand what the purpose of your nonprofit really is. So when you don't allow those to be working collaboratively but separately, then you sort of shortchange yourself. But how many nonprofits are big enough to operate those, completely independently? It's few.
Yeah, just the bigger ones. And I worked for one of the really big ones at one point, and marketing was very separate from fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
And the marketing team was not supportive of fundraising. They were interested in promoting the organization. I don't know. It didn't really work.
Yeah.
And there was always a battle about, we need this information, or where's our fact sheet, or where's a newsletter, and they were off doing something else.
I find a lot that the bigger you get in any sort of entity structure, the more people lean into their titles, to say, oh, well, this is what I do. So I'm a marketing person. You're a development person. You don't get my world, and I don't want to get yours, that kind of thing. And it's not helpful, because at the end of the day, both marketing and development want the same thing, which is the success of the organization. Every nonprofit that exists is trying to put itself out of business because it wants to solve the problem. And I think we forget that. It's that positive friction piece that we do need some friction in collaborative workspaces. We need some people kind of not always finding the most joyous, harmonious way of working together, so that we can get to challenges that bring forth the better ideas. But the positive aspect of that friction has to be that everyone is united to the common goal. So we still need the marketing department and the development department to be on the same team. They have to understand that they want the success of the organization. They have to understand that they want the impact to be met. So if we separate them so far, then we're just making it that much harder for the organization to function as it should. If we merge them together to the point where there is no possibility for friction, we're also limiting ourselves in what we can do. So it's a balance. It's absolutely a balance.
Let's talk about social media as part of a marketing or development for a nonprofit. It seems like nonprofits are supposed to be everywhere, keeping up with the Joneses, on being on all the platforms. How do they do that? Is that really important? I mean, again, are we going back to just be consistent?
Yes, a little bit. But what I think people sort of oversimplify is you need to be on all social media every day, all the time. That's not necessarily true. You need to be on the social media that aligns best with your audience at the cadence that they would like to receive you. So we'll take, for instance, let's say that we're working with mothers who, are dealing with hardships in their family, single moms, let's say. And my nonprofit serves single moms, so I'm going to think about how single moms are going to effectively manage social media. We know that they have it. We know that they may lean more heavily into Facebook and Instagram. They may lean away from something like a LinkedIn. We know that as far as where kind of Twitter or X now is in the world, a lot of individual people have pulled off of there, whereas you have companies that are still kind of trying to feel out where they want their presence to be. So we say, okay, we're not going to put time and energy into X. We are, Threads kind of came up and is already being sort of forgotten, so we're not going to spend time and energy there. But our Facebook and Instagram content is going to be centered on those single moms and reaching them where they are. Now, in order to run my nonprofit, I have donors. I have donors who are interested in backing single moms. Maybe they can relate to that situation. Maybe they come from a single mom household, something like that. Well, where are they? So my more affluent people who are going to give to these organizations, they are more likely to be in the professional sphere. They're more likely to be looking for organizations to support that have a professional presence. They are going to be on LinkedIn. Okay, so my LinkedIn content needs to be geared towards my donors. So my messaging is going to be very different. My visuals may be a bit different. My brand still needs to be consistent across them. They have to know where it's coming from. So there's not separate logos and separate taglines or anything like that, but maybe my imagery changes, maybe my color palette changes just slightly, things like that. So it's an assessment. Who are we trying to talk to? Where are they? And if I also think about that even a step further, I say, okay, well, my single moms are going to be looking when their kids go to bed. That's when they're going to be on social media. So if I get a post between 8 and 9 p.m. at night, I can schedule that at the beginning of the day, and it's going to run then, and they're more likely to see it in their feeds, as opposed to my donors. They're going to be checking LinkedIn first thing in the morning, maybe around lunch. So I'm going to schedule those posts to go out at 9 a.m. and noon. So you learn all of that. And it's not an intuitive thing necessarily to just know how people use social media. Instead, we have to check in with ourselves and our friends and our family and say, how do you use it? When do you check in? That's where the marketing consultant can come in, and they'll tell you the same thing. This is how we've kind of learned these behaviors, is because we're engaging in it too. So we have numbers, but we also know how we want to be approached. So does every nonprofit need to be on every social media platform? No. Does every nonprofit even need to have social media? Maybe not. If their demographics, if all the people that they're trying to work with don't use it, they don't need to put time, money, or effort into it. But you do want to have a plan. You want to have a strategy.
Oh, which leads to a question that I have about creating a plan.
Yes.
So how, again, we're looking at a small to average size nonprofit. Mm-hmm. They don't have a marketing department.
Yes.
They have a development department of maybe a couple of people. Mm-hmm. How do they come up with a marketing plan? How do they know what a marketing plan is?
Yeah. Well, so if we have a development department and that's kind of all that we have, then we need to consider, first and foremost, when are our best times for grants and donations. And we're going to start the calendar around that. This is when we know we have our high volume months for donations and for grants being accepted. Then I'm going to kind of pull around there and I'm going to say, okay, when I have those months, here in Dallas, we've got North Texas Giving Day, September. So around September and leading up to it in August, I'm going to be very active in my outreach around that time. And I need to make sure that I have all of my materials done ahead of that. So I'm not trying to catch up to myself in August and September, because the big organizations started planning for it in April. So I'm going to set some time aside in maybe July at the latest, if not June, to start putting together my ideas for North Texas Giving Day. End of year giving, I'm going to try to give myself about a 2-month runway for end of year giving, because again, everybody else is going to be right there with it. I was recently talking to somebody about considering being just before a big giving moment, if that's when you need to lean in, because there's a lot of competition for dollars. So if you can think about it, okay, everyone's going to be giving right around, the holidays, the December holidays. Maybe I need to make my ask in November when it's still the kind of the season of giving, but not quite as much competition for everyone. So you start kind of planning around your giving cycles. And then you look at, where are my weakest points in the year? Where is it that I'm going the longest stretch between giving cycles? And I really need to have some interest, some awareness. Maybe it's a point where the giving is not the concern, but we need volunteers at this point, but we're always coming up short when we need them. Or maybe maybe your nonprofit serves a community that's the most vulnerable at a certain point in the year, and you need to make sure that you're able to serve them. So you've got to pull attention to it ahead of that problem. So you kind of make your calendar based on your organization and how it runs, and then you focus the message around what it is that you need to accomplish, and that creates the marketing plan. It's not really. It does not need to be separated from the same kind of strategic programming, development work, all of those things that you're already doing. The marketing should only make that easier for you because it's bringing awareness to it.
That sounds almost doable.
Almost
doable. So taking it a step maybe beyond the plan, and you've implemented it and it's like year end or maybe the beginning of the next year. Talk about what a marketing audit is and how that helps or not.
Yeah. Well, the audit can't help you if you don't know how to interpret the information that you get by any means. And some marketing audits are not helpful because there's not enough information to really cull from. So when we talk about auditing your marketing, auditing your website, auditing your brand, any of those things, what we're really talking about is assessing it for its strength, what worked, and its weaknesses, what failed, and trying to get as much information from those two things as possible. When this worked, why did it work? Was it that our marketing creative was really great? Did we have a fantastic story to tell? Or is it that everyone happened to come to our event at the same time and we just did a really good job, getting our funds in? If something didn't work, was that controllable? Or was there also a natural disaster around that time? And so everyone's focus got pulled somewhere else. You have to look at the fullest picture that you can. And ultimately, you also want to see differences year over year. That will help you eliminate those kinds of fluke things or coincidental things, because it's very unlikely that something will always repeat every single year in terms of what could be outside of your efforts, the thing that contributed to your success or your failure. Those things are not going to happen on a calendar, every year. If you have kept consistent with your approach for 2 years, 3 years, and you can see trends, every time we do this, we're getting better and better at it, or we're having worse and worse results, then you really know what you're doing. I think that people make a mistake when they want to, we're going to come up with this kind of campaign. We're going to send out these emails, and we're going to have these social posts, and all of these things are going to happen for 30 days. And then we're going to look at it and see what happened. Well, 30 days isn't really long enough to get enough information from. Anything could have happened over that month that, again, could have made you very successful or not, that are completely outside of your control. We don't have enough information. Maybe not enough people saw it, or maybe everybody saw it, but if we would have looked 1 month ahead, maybe that would have changed in some way or another. So you have to have a long enough period of time, enough data to really decide what the audit is saying, but reviewing all of your materials and looking for successes, failures, even neutral points are really helpful. When something stayed completely consistent over time, that's helpful to know. It's not effective or ineffective, but it's neutral. Okay, how can we move the needle in one way or another? So I think that at least answers part of the question: is it helpful? What it is going through each of the materials and assessing it for those strengths. But I may be looking at the brand. I may say, okay, our logo, we've had our logo for 15 years. But when I look at other organizations' logos, they look a little bit more polished or more current. Maybe ours looks dated. Maybe our color palette feels dreary and sad, and we're trying to be joyous and hopeful. And so we're going to be looking at all of those things. We'll be looking at our messaging. When we said our mission statement like this, people were really responsive. But when we changed it and we used some different words, people sort of backed away or had more questions, things like that. So you'll go through all of your materials, all of your brand elements, and really kind of hold them up next to competitors, next to what you were doing before, and just get a feel for whether or not they're working for you.
Is this something that's done once a year? Or because when I was hearing you, as you were talking, it sounded like, oh, maybe this needs to be done like immediately after each event or immediately after a campaign. But then I'm hearing you you lay everything out to look at it. So, or is it a combination of both maybe?
It's a combination, yeah. We need to gather our data after any major milestone. So after an event, end of your fiscal year, after any sort of big campaigns or collaborations, anything like that, you gather the data. How many people came to the event? How much money did we raise? Did anybody say anything like, oh, got your email, it looks so great, or I really loved this? And you capture all of that. And then on a yearly basis, it's a great idea to go back and look at what you did and kind of get a feel for how successful the year was. But once you have a couple of years worth of information, then hold it up next to each year and say, what's the trend? What am I seeing? Do we need a rebrand? Do we need to bring in a marketing consultant to help us out here? Are we at a point where we need some outside help, or no, we're doing really well. We've got it.
So is this the audit, something that staff does, or do you bring in someone from the outside?
It could be done either way. The staff can do it if they are, if they don't have emotional ties to the brand or the marketing. So they have to stay very neutral and just say, this is what the impact was. These are the results. This is the data. They also, people feeling like they must be an expert in marketing in order to have opinions on marketing. You don't. You don't, because marketing lives out in the world for everyone. Brands live out in the world for everyone. And our human reaction to those is actually of more value than the marketing expert's opinion of that reaction. So if you bring the staff together, we all have to decide when we come in this room to do this audit, no one gets to feel, they're, well, I'm the one that put that newsletter together, so I think it was really great. Let's put it all down. It's all just assets, in the world. That's okay. And then everyone needs to feel that their voices and opinions hold equal weight, because they do. And their observations hold equal weight. So, yeah, they can do it. If you don't have the people in the room that can do that, though, bring in the outside. Be unbiased.
I'm going to shift gears here and go back to what we were talking about earlier about whether to hire someone in-house or bring on a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you what an ED, an executive director, should
Mm-hmm.
look for in either case
Yeah.
in the person they want to hire. What should they be asking themselves about these people?
For well, okay. When we think about it at the very beginning, it is, what is it that I want the outcome to be? If I am looking for big results, data, numbers, dollars coming in, if I'm looking for big results, I need to find the person that thinks in results. I personally am not a person that thinks in results. I think more emotionally. I think more about that overall impact. So that's how I approach things. I want to know that when we went out into the world, we changed the most lives, we made the most things possible. But I'm not thinking about that in terms of numbers. So I'm not the match for an executive director that wants to see my facts and figures presented at the report at the end of the month, because I'm not that person. So you want to decide, what am I looking for as an executive director? And let me find that quality first. When you're evaluating someone's expertise or their experience, a lot of people will tend to want to go with that the person has direct expertise. I'm a nonprofit that works with rescuing dogs. I want to see that you have worked with dog rescues before. Well, actually, you're more likely to get a kind of a standard approach when you go that way that may not help you stand out. It may not help you rise above. It may put you exactly at the same spot as everyone else, and they've created it. Well, you've already had competition, but they've created another level of competition that maybe you weren't trying to look for. If you can push outside of the box and you say, okay, I'm a dog rescue, I'm looking for someone that can inspire people to want to support something that is not going to change their daily life, because it's not. If you're a person that loves dogs, and I am that person, I love every dog I've ever seen. The thought of any dog being in any terrible situation, I can't stand beside it. But I need to be inspired to give to the dog rescue even still, but more so for someone that doesn't care about that. So where else has someone effectively worked with a nonprofit that maybe doesn't have a direct impact type of story to tell, but still a very worthy cause? Where are they? And how did they do that? Okay, I want to bring that person to me. So I tell everything in anecdotes. Have you learned? It's what am I looking for? Find that. Rather than looking for direct experience, matching experience, find something that is at the core of the problem that you're trying to solve, not your direct lane that you serve as a nonprofit. And then it's great if you can find a good personality match too. But those two things, I think, are the most important.
What are some books or podcasts or publications or other resources an ED or development director could use when building a marketing team or just for their own education?
Mm-hmm. I like to go outside of direct verticals, I'm a really big fan of this podcast called What Works. It's hosted by a woman, Tara McMullen. Every now and again, she'll have her husband, Sean McMullen, do it. But this is a story, every episode is a different story, different perspectives from people who have started their own businesses. Some of them are nonprofits, but most of them are for-profits. It's all kind of centered around how you tackled a different issue. The marketing, the branding, the awareness, the customer or audience building, assessing when it's time to make a change, all of those things. And I feel like nonprofits could take from that so many different ideas because we get really tethered into what we're told are the forms and structures that we're allowed to operate in. And especially when I had my nonprofit, I felt that way, that there are only so many ways that you can go about these problems that we're all dealing with. It's all fundraising and it's all, trying to get the support that you need and making sure that your programs are effective. But we forget at the end of the day that we can really borrow from any type of entity structure and pull into ours. So I think it will help people to kind of get their brains out of the nonprofit world and learn from the for-profit with that and hear someone's story of this kind of moment, this challenge point, and what worked for them. Because more than likely, you're going to face or have faced a similar challenge within your own nonprofit, and that approach might be novel. It might take you into someplace new. So I love that one a lot. I also, this doesn't directly have to do with marketing, although marketing is involved in it. I think it's a good idea for nonprofits I would say maybe every 3 to 5 years to kind of assess their overarching business model and see if anything needs to be shaken up about it. There are different exercises. I've done Keep, Change, Kill, which is, sounds pretty violent, but, it's a process where you go through and you kind of put out all of the different aspects of your organization, and then you put those on sticky notes or something, and you make 3 columns, and these things we're going to keep, these things we're going to change, these things are gone. You can do these types of exercises and then ultimately pull them all together into a new business model strategy. And maybe it's a pivot. Maybe it's that your same model is great. Or maybe it's that, you're kind of facing a full restructure. You can then use a book like Business Model Generation, which I really love, to take those pieces that you found and revamp the model. Business Model Generation is written like a workbook, and it has all these different scenarios laid out in it. So you kind of identify where you fit and then flip to those pages and kind of take your team through those exercises. In that, it has some scenarios kind of like the Keep, Change, Kill. But within those, I think there's a lot there. I mean, a lot of it has to do with kind of coming up, taking a look around, seeing what other people are trying, and seeing how that works for you.
I love that, especially I think many people in the nonprofit sector, including myself, we're here, we stay here, we don't look outside because that's the big bad world out there, and we're going to just do our work in here. I've heard of the What Works podcast.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it yet, but I will now definitely tune into it. What is one thing you want our listeners to take away from our conversation? What is the one thing, if there's one thing? Maybe there's more.
I want for any nonprofit person, executive director, bleeding heart like myself, whoever you are, that you're kind of in that nonprofit world. I want them all to remember at the end of the day that we are all people, we're all humans, and we all are looking to relate and connect in a very similar way. When we start throwing around words like marketing and key performance indicators and these types of things, they sound really threatening and imposing. They sound very non-human, and to an extent they are. But if we sort of step back from the expectation of the jargon and we remember what we're trying to do, it's the awareness. I want the other people, the other humans, to be aware of what work we're doing. And I can approach it in a very human way. That, to me, has helped me kind of pull down some of my own barriers to some of this work. Stepping out from behind the computer as a graphic designer to being, an executive director, yes, but also just leading a company in general. It was very daunting, very scary, and I felt like I was going to do it wrong until I remembered that it's all talking to people, reaching people, touching their hearts or inspiring them to do something. And that itself is very human. So any approach that comes with that kind of genuine desire will yield an appropriate outcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Keisha Whaley, Brass Tacks founder and owner. Appreciate you being with me. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.